man. It's good to see you. How are you?
Great to see you. Oh, I'm splendid. I just got out of the shop and I'm ready to talk about art.
All
Hello,
right.
everyone. Welcome back to the Artist's Way. We're in week one. I feel like we're just beginning. I feel like we've done a lot and we're just getting started. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a weird sensation when you've already read so much and talked about so much, and then you say week one. It's like, is it? It feels like it's week nine here, But
Right.
um, yeah, this first week is really good. We're gonna get into some great stuff. I have a question. I know some people are still going to be coming on, but I'm curious how many folks are reading the chapter ahead of our class and how many people are reading it after our class, because you get people doing it two different ways. So if anybody's already on, if you can kind of chat, let us know if you're doing the week before or the week after of the review of the chapter.
That's a really good point. Yeah, because I mean, honestly, I wouldn't know. Naturally, I wouldn't know how to approach this whole thing. I'm glad I have
Sure.
your guidance, buddy.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is some people like already read it and kind of experimented with some of the stuff and then they go into it. And then other people do after this. So you know, I told you this when we were talking about doing this class. This class predominantly really messes with everybody's head because there's no wrong way to do it. You can just kind of choose to miss some things and or choose not to, but you'll be
Right.
amazed on the other end of this how many people have gone through this in a completely different way than you have.
Definitely one, I guess whatever feels intuitive, right? Like whatever feels natural. And I'm
Yeah.
seeing in the chat that a lot of people are caught up. They've read week one, so
Awesome.
we're experiencing this all together,
Yeah.
which is really cool.
Yeah.
So last week we were talking about morning pages, but especially artist dates.
Right.
And I finally took my artist date. I was sick there for a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went to a place called Harbor Freight. I don't know if you have
Oh.
one in your
Oh,
area.
we've got them. Oh yeah, the
Okay,
Holy
good.
Land. We go there all the time, man.
Usually I invest in really nice tools, and nothing against Harbor Freight, but it's on the cheaper side, and it is such a joy to be able to just roll in there like a sultan,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and
I'll take two
I
of
could buy
those and three
anything
of
in here.
those.
Yeah. So I got a bunch of fun little tools, knickknacks that I had no idea that I needed, and I
Sure.
treated myself, and that was wonderful.
Good. How would you say you felt on your way leaving for the artist date?
Ooh, that's a really good point. Also, in the chat, please tell us about your artist
Yeah,
dates.
please.
The way I felt coming out, I felt like someone treated me to kind of like a nice time. I felt I kind of felt seen, even though
Yeah.
it was just me.
Yeah.
I felt kind of understood. Like I felt like I was supporting myself.
Yeah.
You
Did you
know,
feel that way when you were leaving the house to go on your first date?
no,
Like, what
no,
was
I
your
felt
thought process then?
on my way there. I felt very self-indulgent.
Right. Yeah. You get like I use the word bougie. Like you get this feeling
Bougie.
like, oh, I'm so special, and all you're doing is taking an hour for yourself. But I love that after your session, it's interesting. You do. I love what you said. You feel seen. That's because the artist in you is being seen,
Yeah.
and people look at this however you want, but you're not by yourself when you're doing these things. You're with every version of yourself.
Mm, yeah, that's a really good way to see that. It was wild, and I feel like I used to do this very naturally. Like
Yeah.
it always felt really good to go to like Staples and get brand new pens.
Yes.
That
Yep.
felt amazing,
Yeah.
and I was like, deep down, I know I should do this more often.
Yeah.
But having a little bit of structure for it, I couldn't be more excited. This is gonna be
Well,
great.
yeah, and somebody else just made a comment that they felt silly as well, and that's I'm so glad everyone does. Like you just feel silly, just like you feel silly the first time you go to the gym in a long time, or the first time you get on a bike in 30 something years, or there's a silliness that we as creatives and as artists, we have to learn how to just look past. I mean, creating is being comfortable being silly. And that this is part of that is getting back to what it means to play and to be creative and not take yourself so serious and not be such a hardcore adult. We're
Wow.
adulting too much.
That's fascinating. That's spot on. Yeah.
Yep.
No kidding.
So I was also interested to hear or see what your sensor looks like.
Oh, okay. I have not drawn him yet, but I have
Okay.
the clearest image I could possibly have. It's
Right on.
actually from a video. You
Okay.
want to hear about him?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So there was a viral video way back when, probably 10 years ago, and it was called Trumpet Fight. I don't know if
Okay.
you're familiar with this, Damien.
Mm-mm.
Look him up. It's all over YouTube. It
Okay.
was it was one of like it was a famous video. And now let me preface this here. This has nothing to do against this gentleman. I mean, we've
Sure.
all had bad days. We've all had an argument. You know, there's no hate towards this gentleman, but
Sure.
he so perfectly like embodied what my inner voice sounds like, and it's this very heavy. You know, is that?
I just pulled it up.
Oh, do you remember this?
Yes, that's hilarious. So
You
your
suck.
sensor is that guy.
No, no, it's the dude that's telling him you suck. You're
Awesome.
nobody. You're nothing. He goes on this tirade, and he starts name dropping. Like he walked Bob Dylan up to the stage. He's probably accomplished things, maybe
Yeah.
not. But this like hardcore critic, and he says such hurtful things to
Yeah.
this poor person that's just trying to like play his trumpet somewhere publicly.
Yeah.
Maybe he wasn't very good, but that's whatever. And oh my goodness! And actually, there's a moment that kind of breaks your heart a little bit because he starts tearing into this guy quite eloquently, and you start to realize that this is probably the way he talks to himself.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
And and that's for me, that's devastating to see this poor person, um, tearing this stranger apart in
yeah.
the same way he probably does to himself.
Yeah.
So, I think I'll have to draw him. I'm gonna draw him, but,
Awesome. It's
this
awesome.
it's the trumpet
It's
guy.
so clear. Yeah, no, that's a precise image of a sensor, and it's perfect. And if I can just unpack that for a few seconds before we move on, it's fascinating. Last week we talked about the analogy of somebody bumps into you and you spill your coffee. We all get mad at the person for bumping into us, but also another way of viewing that is what's in your mug is what comes out.
Mm,
And it's sad when I watch something like that. The internet's full of video of people just losing their minds and Karen videos and all that.
right.
And what's scary to me is, the old principle that I was taught, whatever somebody does in public, they do much more in private. If that's how they're comfortable to talk out loud, oh my God. I mean,
Right.
we can't even imagine how just vicious their inner dialogue is. And then also to understand how hurt that person is. That person stopped any of their dreams, I can guarantee you, a long time ago. And they're being, the term's overused, but they're being triggered by somebody else being so brave and so bold and so careless and looking so silly that it just spins them out, man. You know,
Yes.
that's
Ye
a shadow artist. We're literally about to talk about that. That is a shadow artist losing their shit.
it's it's remarkable, and I didn't realize that. Yeah, that's a perfect segue, isn't it? My
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah. Well, before we move into that, I'd love to hear from anybody else in the chat
Yes.
what your view of your sensor is, if you guys participated in that. And again, there's tons of exercises. I don't expect you to do all of them. The morning pages and the artist date, I feel, in the book says is the most important. But there'll be a bunch of other exercises, and you don't have to do them. But the sensor one's a really fun one. That's my own that I've kind of added to it. Does anybody else, include it, and then we can talk about it either now or towards the end. But I'd love to hear what anybody else's sensor looks like in their mind. You know, um,
Definitely,
it's
definitely.
interesting. My sensor, I'm a visual guy, but my sensor has always just been the letter C with fangs on it. And I mean, for 20 plus years, that's what I picture is just this attacking sensor.
Yeah,
You know?
and it's just so insidious, just how it
Yeah.
can crush creativity.
Oh yeah. I mean, and it's what we're going to find out as we go through this is it's actually been designed to crush creativity. It's something that was there to protect us. You know, we're going to get into that here too about protecting the child artist. Here we go. There's something on. Well, yeah. That's
Robin.
great. You and me both, man. You and me both. Um, so let's jump into week one because
Absolutely.
there's a lot here, and I'm gonna have my book with me. It'll be off camera, but I'm gonna read quite a bit more from Julia this week than I have been because the first 2 weeks there was just so much to cover. Now we can kind of slow down and really just take our time through each chapter. Um, so week one, recovering a sense of safety. The thing that you're going to hear me come back to time again is every time we talk about something, I want you to try to capture your initial thoughts. I
Mm,
really, really want you to try to capture the negative thinking, the censor jumping in. I've had people shut down over just the title of this chapter. Like, I'm safe. I'm an adult. I'm a grown man. I'm a grown woman. I'm safe. Look at the reaction that's already
yeah.
bubbling up. You know, um, if you were as safe as you need to be to create, you would be prolifically creating. None of us are as safe as we would like to be creative. Um, and it's kind of like I have to teach my own kids about learning how to be uncomfortable. You know, there's a difference between physical safety, mental safety, and emotional safety.
Mm,
We're all, for the most part, I hope, physically safe, but a lot of us are not in an emotionally safe place, like the trumpet person you're talking about. You know, we live with a violent abuser. We live with internal spousal abuse, domestic abuse. We're constantly attacking ourselves. We're constantly criticizing ourselves. And, Max, you and I say things kind of in passing, and it can lose some of the. I can say this almost as like a joke. Like, I mean, if we talk to anybody like this out loud, we get our ass kicked. And I say that all the time. But
right.
another way to kind of connect with it is it's really like living with an abusive mate of some sort, and it's
Right.
internal, and nobody knows that that person is there and is constantly grinding. And so the idea of recovering a sense of safety is, let's define what that safety is. um, I love this quote here that she says in the opening part: caught between the dream of action and the fear of failure, shadow artists are born. So
Mm,
I'm just going to let everybody know this, what we're about to talk about. It's painful for a lot of people. It's been very painful for me. I'm going to be very transparent of my own experiences. Um, a shadow artist, in short, is someone, and I'm begging people to read this part of this chapter. She's so good at explaining it. I was a shadow artist. I wanted to be a filmmaker. So I became an editor. No big deal. I love editing to this day. I love editing. I've been up editing this whole week and I love to edit, but I wasn't directing.
mm,
And then at another time, I worked at like a video store. And I found when I started taking this course 20 years ago that I was all around on the periphery of being a director. I knew the language. I was taking script classes. I was writing scripts. I was going to theater. I was doing all of this that you would do almost as a hobby, but I
right.
was not being a director. And what this chapter really breaks out, and again, please listen to your inner dialogue as we talk about this. Pretty much all of us are 1 to 2 to 10 degrees away from what we really want to be when we grow up.
Huh.
Most of
Yeah.
us, and some of us have been more successful to where we've done something and it worked. And so we stuck with that thing because that's the thing that worked. Right.
Right.
Then there's others of us that have kind of done the Jurassic Park dinosaur testing the fence. Like, we're looking for the best way to get into being who we are, and we'll spend our life looking for that pocket. Um, and that's been me. I mean, not just I didn't stop after my first artist way. If I'm not careful, my day job, so to speak, is working with content creators such as yourself.
Right.
So if I'm not careful, I can be a shadow artist to people that are out doing their art. I'm in the background and I'm supporting and I'm great at that and I love that. But I have to constantly pull myself forward to do my own art.
Right. Right.
So I'd like to hear from you, Max, because in my opinion, you are prolifically creative and you in your output. You get a lot of people that are creative, but they don't have a lot of output. But you have amazing output and creative. How does this shadow artist thing resonate with you?
Ooh. Um, God, this is really tough because I somehow was blessed with a lot of tenacity. I think it's more so stubbornness than anything. And I had a lot of people telling me that this was never going to work. You need to get a real job,
Yeah,
so on and so forth. And that were really trying to talk me down off this artist's cliff.
yeah,
And I still went for it. But there's been plenty of times where you it's almost scary to not be an expert at something.
yeah.
At least, especially like in my 20s. Um, I always had to be good at everything, and that's ridiculous. And I think not to get too into psychology here, but being raised by a really grandiose narcissist and where they're just excellent at everything all the time, right?
Mm,
They're
yeah,
controlling that narrative,
yeah,
and a little bit, it's pretty tough to not have that brushed up off of you. But now I love not knowing things, and being new to stuff and being challenged by my own weaknesses. I think I've come to terms with my strengths. Now I can now accept my weaknesses. But there's definitely been times, especially in my 20s, where I was a shadow artist in some fashion.
yeah, yeah. And it's funny because all of these things we will cycle in and out of. You know,
Mm.
Humans are horrible at remembering how fluid life is. That's why death is so shocking to us. We're like, what? This ends right here? Like, there's a flow and nothing ever really stops developing, evolving, however you want to, look at it. So,
Right.
today your world is blacksmith with a fantasy edge to it, right? 10 years from now, who knows what you're going to be inspired from? And then you could start the whole shadow artist thing again,
Right.
where you're playing pool and cards and hanging out with people that are screenwriters and you can talk the screenwriting game just as good as anyone, but you're not a screenwriter.
Right.
And there's something that I want to point out here that the critics that you have in real world outside of you, especially your internal critic, they use this shadow artist thing to permanently hold you back from ever contributing. For
Mhm.
example, when we were kids, you remember going up to your parents and telling them, "Oh, I want to be a this, this, and this," and then 2 weeks later, you change your mind. Well, that's cute when you're 4, 5, 6, whatever, but when you're 47, people have no patience for that crap, right?
Right.
That happens a lot with shadow artists to where your own husband, wife, mates, friends can be like, you say you're going to write a script, but you don't ever write a script. And everybody now starts kind of jumping on that shadow artist bandwagon, and you will just begin to believe that it's true, that this is as close as you can get to the goal. But now you got to be practical, you got to be realistic, and the chapter goes into this a lot. Let me read this. Shadow artists are gravitating to their rightful tribe but cannot yet claim their birthright. Just think about how painful that is.
Yeah.
So I don't mean like posers, if that term works with everybody, right? I don't mean the kid that wanted to be the skater, dressed like the skater, talk like the skater, but couldn't pop an ollie, right? I mean,
Right.
I mean, we don't even know we're doing it. We're around our tribe. We're around our kind of people, right? But we can't accept that mantle ourselves. So we have kind of
Mhm.
an orphaned spirit. Like that's what it's called in psychology, where you have like an orphaned disconnect. And then you throw on any of the mental health issues, challenges, diagnoses that we have. and mental illness really stews in this space. And I want to encourage anybody that's watching this either now or in the future, as someone who's been on any number of psych meds, over like my life, many times my real wrestling with depression was hiding in this little part of my being, which is I'm so close to being what I want to be and what I know that I am, but I'm busy watching everybody else do it. And
Fascinating.
it's heartbreaking. It's
Yeah.
it's heartbreaking. It crushes your spirit. And we add all these quick little ways to explain it away. Oh, I don't have this. I'm not that. We're good at explaining it. But I want the people that are watching this now to know you've got a tribe and this is your right. This is your birthright. If you're breathing oxygen, you have the right to express yourself any way you want and you get to spend your whole life doing it. So if you've waited too long, I know that and she talks about it here, the longer you wait, it almost gets worse because you're like, now I've squandered 20 years. Max, have you ever accomplished something and the first thing that goes through your mind is, I could have done this 10 years ago?
Oh,
You know what
yeah,
I mean?
like, yeah, relying on a certain tool where I was trying to be very traditional or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, there's definitely one. Yeah, there's quite a few.
There's like
I
an
I
instant
definitely.
regret that kicks in.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And then you get even more mad at yourself. Right? So this is a destructive cycle that she talks about. And there's a quote here I wish people would tattoo on their foreheads, not literally.
Well,
Very
backwards so they
often,
can see it in the mirror, right?
yeah, make sure you do it backwards though. Very often, audacity, not talent, makes one person an artist and another a shadow artist.
Oh, just this chapter. Are the rest of the chapters this like, laying
Yep.
bombs on us like that?
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
God.
and for time's sake, we have to move into some of these other sections as well. But uh, please hear me. This is more of an issue of courage
Yeah.
than it is anything else. And the root word of courage, a lot of people don't know the actual root word means heart. The heart is where the problem is coming from, the heart. It's a fear that seized our heart when we were kids or when we were criticized or when we went through immense trauma. And yes, we're functioning adults. When did the goal become to be a functioning adult? Like,
That's what we were told. It's a sham.
right. This is a harsh example, and I like to use extreme examples to get a point across. I one time was doing some therapy and working with a lady who was being abused by her husband, physically abused. And what she said to me stopped my heart and scared me so bad. When I said, why don't you leave? She was like, well, he doesn't make me bleed. He's never sent me to the hospital. I just get bruises. Now, I don't want to trigger everyone and whatever, but think about that from the context of what we're talking about. You are
Yeah.
allowing yourself to live with this abusive mate, the censor, that's constantly telling you you're a piece of crap, constantly telling you you're a piece of shit. Then when you respond to being told you're a piece of crap, they're like, see, that's proof.
Yeah.
That's laziness. That's just the only real way. There's no wizard stick. I wish there was. There's no magic for this. And Max, maybe you can help me explain this. The longer you stay in a shadow artist position, the longer you're not learning to be courageous.
100%. So I do my best to act on my creativity, as much as I possibly can, but it all has to be relatively safe. Well, one, because, these are commissioning clients and they
Right.
have
Yeah,
depths
this
to
is
their own
commercial art.
creativity.
Yeah.
And for literally my entire life, I have told myself, you just wait. You just wait until I get to do what I know I can do. And that's been 20 years now.
Yeah.
And now it's built up so much and I've hyped it up so much in my mind. I'm almost terrified to even begin because I've been stewing on these art designs, these
Yeah.
these experiences that I cannot wait to give people that I'm going to do one day. But Now it just seems like the mountain is getting taller and taller.
And it is. And I say this out of love and immense respect. But my both my parents passed away this past summer, and I had the job of cleaning out their house. Both my parents were inventors, highly creative people that would never let themselves create. And I had to clean, sort, and dispose of boxes full of ideas, inventions, books. I mean, on and on and on. And my point here is not to be rude. It's not just, seize the day. You got to be careful the little pockets that we store away in our minds. That one day thing, that can become like a disease where you just think one day, and it's like you're trying to get that beach ball in the water and you reach for it, it just barely moves out of your way. And Max, there's always a reason. And I'm talking, dude, I'm talking to myself.
Yeah.
I've really struggled with this. And I went and made movies and then stopped making movies. And guess what? Getting back to making movies was just as scary, if not scarier, than the first time, you know? So there's something to be said about courage. I don't mean just hurrah, we don't need more motivational. What we need is to understand that we are living in a smaller and smaller and smaller version of ourselves. And it's getting smaller and it's closing in on us. And now when we say, oh, I need to be safe, that just means barely where you used to be a few months ago. You see what I'm saying? The
Yeah.
the the fear is closing in. It's the trash compactor in Star Wars, I mean,
Right,
it's
right.
closing in. And the only way is to do something that requires courage. You gotta rip the damn band-aid. If you're
Right.
scared to paint, you have to paint. If you're scared to swing a hammer, you gotta swing a hammer. If you're scared to sing, you gotta hit a karaoke bar. And that instantly breaks that thing. And you get this room to kind of breathe and flex again. This is part of morning pages. Morning pages is a crowbar trying to give you space for you to create again. And we could talk for years on shadow artists alone.
100%.
Um, it's such a major point, but I do want to hit a few more points and then move on, if that's all right. Um, where is it? Oh, here we go. I can barely see in here. Shadow artists must learn to take themselves seriously. With gentle, deliberate effort, they must nurture their artist child. Creativity is play, but for shadow artists, learning to allow themselves to play is hard work. I want to come back. That is a working definition of trauma. When children are abused, they instantly forget how to play. You've heard me say this.
Right.
And then trying to get children to play again, it's always really, really hard work. That is the way that if you can't sit down and create, you can't draw, whatever gives you a buzz, whatever gives you that juice, if you can't do that, it was trauma that has caused this. It wasn't
Because
just you got
everyone's naturally
busy.
creative
That's
in
our
some way
natural
or
state.
fashion.
That's our natural state. And
Yeah.
so if yes, you spend your life creating, but some of the people watching, they may not, or they create for a little bit and then they shut back down. That is a trauma response. And the first time something goes wrong with your creation, it's this: I knew it, this sucks, I shouldn't do it, and everything implodes.
Suddenly the censor's right, that dirty bastard.
That's right. And
Yeah.
we get smaller and smaller and smaller, and you take more shallow breaths creatively, and so the artist date, as silly as it feels, and those of us that feel silly going on an artist date, that should inform you of something. You're not
Mm.
taking yourself seriously as an artist. If you feel weird, silly, whatever, taking yourself out to go look at supplies or do whatever, or just to charge yourself up, we
Yeah.
need to learn from that. We have to learn.
This is fascinating.
Um, Typically, the recovery shadow artist will use the early efforts to discourage the continued exploration. And that's the last thing I want to say about this. There's another trap. This is basically all just traps, right? So you start to create, you mess it up, because that's what it means to learn. And then you go, well, I've waited too long. Now everybody can do this. This is ridiculous. And they just shut down. And you get caught in this self repeating cycle, and you get smaller and smaller and smaller. And then you hear some wise ass guy like me that's like, come on, rah, rah. And you go out and you paint and you mess it up and you get smaller. And it's a cynical spirit. It's a cynical attitude. Like, I knew it if I tried
Yeah.
this. Or how many times have we all heard, of course, of course that would happen to me. If it was going to fail, it would fail with me, right? That mindset, that is a splinter that was put there by critical parents, critical teachers. You were the clumsy kid, you were the goofy kid, you had a label. And now you're an adult and we're like, all right, you're labeled all this negative stuff, but go ahead and be creative and be fascinating. And you're like, what are you talking about? I'm a total turd according to what I was raised to believe, you know?
Right.
So the
Yeah.
shadow artist piece is not, it's not an easy thing. I'm asking everyone to read this section like I do, highlight the bejesus out of it, because, and come back to it and just listen to your reactions when you're reading about a shadow artist, and it will tell you so much
And
of
it's
how
amazing
we're doing it.
how fast it is. That knee-jerk reaction is milliseconds,
Yes.
but it's good
Yeah.
to reflect on.
Well, and that's why, the concept of progress, not perfection. I want to move on to that
Yeah.
because, you know, last week I got to tell you something so funny, Max. You did something to me last week. I learned something from you last week.
Okay.
So last week I had that half done painting of
Yes.
Jafar behind me, and I brought that in to make an example. But in typical Max excited fashion, you challenged me. You triggered my alpha male, and I was like, a challenge? Yeah, I'll do it. Okay. We get off the call, and I never even told you what the point of having that behind me was. You're going to think this is set up, but it's not. I was going to have an exercise where I ask everyone to start a piece of art, a drawing, whatever. And then when it's halfway finished, leave it and
Oh,
watch what it does to you. That was the purpose of that behind me. And then you were like, oh, I give you a challenge and you got to finish it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to finish it. So, and I added some paint because I didn't want to break my word, but I have, I have things sitting around me. I'm a huge symbol guy. I need good, unfinished blankets. There you go. I like to have something around me that's not finished because it drives me crazy, Max. It drives me nutty. And when I walk
interesting.
by and it gives me that itch, it makes me
Yeah.
mad at myself. All these things come up. I learn now, oh, this is that toxic voice that's in my brain all the time. Now, this isn't a paid piece of work. We're not talking about not delivering on clients.
Right.
But I would really like for you, Max, in particular, who I'm pretty willing to bet has a hard time not finishing things.
This is
I'd like
true,
for you to
but I also
start
am
something
surrounded
and
by
not finish it.
unfinished things.
What's
What
that?
was that? Oh, I
I would like you to start something and not finish it.
okay. I mean, actually, I'm gonna find that pretty easy because I do that a lot. But I'll and then not finish it ever.
Maybe, but not for a while. And the goal
Okay.
is to leave it in your productive space and capture your thoughts when you look at it
Okay. With that in mind. All
with
right.
that in mind. And
You
just
got yourself a deal.
watch your thoughts, because they're going to be stuff like you're lazy, you're unorganized, you're setting a bad example. That all this little evil stuff starts encroaching because we were taught that creativity, if we say anything today, this is the most important point. We, whether we admit it or not, we all believe that creativity is about our output and how good the output is. And
Wow.
that is at a core a problem with understanding our creative nature. We were meant to create, not create and sell, not create and scale, not create and do all these things. That's commerce, that's capitalism, that's business, and that's fine. But there's this huge river that flows under that. And your
Oh,
commercial business should be you dipping into that river and making something out of that. It should not take over the whole river. We need to create without putting labels and reasons on it. And
I I can't even I mean, honestly, I can't even remember the last time I did that. I think I did that once, and it's still my favorite piece I've ever made.
interesting, interesting. Now, you can tell me to shut my mouth at any point,
No, you're
but
fine.
you said something earlier in this, you know, there's that nature of one day you've told me as we've been getting to know each other, you're looking forward to being able to do your own work and do your own thing.
Yeah.
And it's been a long time since you've done that. And the last time you did it, it's one of your favorite pieces. So I'm connecting some dots here. I'm Columbo a little bit. Not too, not it's not difficult to see where I'm going with this. There's something in your heart, mind that is protecting you by going, we're going to get there one day. We're going
Yeah.
to get there. And you got to feel safe. And trust me, I know the practical nature of all this. But I would really encourage you, Max, to try to have times where you just create just to create. I don't care if you just pick up a stick and you just whittle it away for a while and then you throw it on a pile.
I have been my kind of outlet, like, I couldn't have chosen a more expensive medium.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
true,
it's
man.
usually money based, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
I'm very frugal, and growing up without a whole lot of means, it's a scary place to be in when you're poor,
yeah,
and I never want to go. I never want to return to that. I never want to
yeah.
feel like the panic of like I don't know what I'm gonna do. Um, so I focused so hard on being productive, being commercial, being all of those things,
Sure.
and really not being very creative. I mean, I am creating things. I'm very much creating things from my own creativity, raw out of imagination,
Oh yeah.
but
Yeah.
not just pure, not just free form, just creating. I really and I've been feeling very uninspired for a while because I'm building things that have been on the books for over a year. It's very
Yeah.
stale to me, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, I got to mention the chat has been on fire with amazing just exposés into who they are, their experiences.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for sharing. I've been reading all of them. They've been incredible.
Awesome.
But yeah, I need to spend some more. Oh, but D&D has been a really wonderful like creative outlet
Yeah.
that's not very costly.
I'm reading that one too. Yeah.
Yeah, they've been
Oh.
incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're explaining all of us. All of us are that way. I will give my clients 150% of myself, and then I will show up with maybe 20% for my own ideas. You
Yeah.
know, I will fight for someone. I will go to town. I mean, I'm a wonderful second for people, but I am not that for myself. And I have to work through this. Guys, I do this once a year
Yeah.
because over time I lose it. This isn't a one time, set it and forget it. And now we're all these prolific. It is an organic process. Life starts to make us get real super practical again or super business driven. And so we have to have that reset, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Well, there's so much philosophy that goes in it.
there is. There really is. I love this idea. She says here, most of the time when we are blocked in an area of our life, it is because we feel safer that way. That one pisses a lot of people off. And I get
Yeah.
it. It's stung me many, many times. But we can't get away from the fact that that's probably really true. If we are continually being stuck somewhere, I'm not talking about mental health issues, trauma, abuse. I'm talking about creatively. A
Yeah.
lot of times we're stuck because we want to be stuck, you know. Um, there's something we're afraid of. My favorite quote of all time by Joseph Campbell is the treasure you seek is in the cave you fear to enter. I said it backwards, but it's the same.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. It just does. And so, how do we go from being afraid to do something to taking a big old belly flop into it? It's that courage. It's using
Yeah,
some of these tools in this book that are silly and simple. And change is scary as shit. Like,
it
change is
is.
scary. So, what if you can change while being silly and not change? Max, if I said, you know what, I'm going to challenge you to do an original piece for yourself and you have to do it live right now. Go ahead, create, like Dance Monkey Dance, right?
Right.
It's horrible. But
Yeah.
instead, we're coming up with all these little simple processes that you can, on very low heat, start developing your creative muscles again in different ways. And you get comfortable feeling silly before you jump all the way out and try to do something that you know you want to do, but you've never done it before. So
Well, and
we
that
got to,
kind of is, we talked about protecting the artist child, but it's almost healing the artist child,
yeah. Well,
bringing them back.
yes, exactly. I love that, Max, because honestly, I work with children in trauma.
Yeah.
Uh, Helping a child be safe after they've been traumatized doesn't work. You have to help them heal and then help them have a sense of safety for them to move on and have any form of a normal life. So 100%, you
Mm.
you can't protect something that's not safe. You can't protect something that's already hurt. And so, understanding how to be kind to yourself, using morning pages to purge that censor, to get all that mean shit kind of out of us a little bit early in the day, taking ourselves on an artist date, it's all silly. That's why it works. That's why it works. I I love this, and we all know it. But negative beliefs are just that. She says it. They're just beliefs. They're not
Yeah.
facts. So the beliefs that we are holding on to so dearly, they're not reality. They're not facts. We've just sat with them for so long that they feel like they're the truth about who we are. So
Right.
you got to challenge them. And again, you challenge them by some of these exercises that are going on. I want to try to get us a little bit caught up so I can hit just one more thing.
Yeah, sure.
Um, this chapter talks about negative beliefs and positive alternate beliefs. Now, last week I said something that, Max, you seem to really grab onto. If we can talk to ourselves in a horrible way, which is an extreme, then we know by default that we can also talk to ourselves in a wonderful, loving way. Because we can do this, we know that the opposite is true.
Right. The pendulum swings just as equally on the other side.
That's right. And I want people watching this to really sit with that. The effortless immediacy of the sensor that's in our mind that attacks us can be effortless, immediate love that protects us. It's nothing more than training.
Mm. Yeah, sign me up for that.
So let me tell you how I've had to do it. Most of the people on here, we jumped in. Nobody knows my background, my story. I won't take time to get into it, but I will in one of these classes where there's more context. But I immediately, my instant word has always been, I'm a hack. I don't know where I got that from. You don't hear people use that term a lot anymore. But even when I was a kid, I got it. I guarantee you I heard my dad say it about himself. But I'm a hack. I'm a hack every time. And I work in a creative environment at agencies, pitching ideas, all that. I'm a hack constantly in my mind. The only way, she's coming to comfort me, the only way to, that I've been able to combat that is every time I'd have that I'm a hack, I would make myself say, I am love. I am love. Now, look, that's hard for some people, man. I'm not
Yeah.
saying I am loved. That's a whole different statement. I am love. I am love. And what I've learned, you could say anything that you want that resonates, but that breaks that negative mindset in my mind. And I get to recenter and remember what I really am at my core, because that's my belief. I believe at my core of creation, I am love.
Yeah.
So that sensor that's just attacking you, we can train it. So now when I mess up on something, a lot of times the first thought I have is, oh my God, that was silly. I am totally love. When I'm
That's
messing up,
incredible.
it took me a while to develop it, but it was just repetition, Max. And
Okay.
you're already
Okay.
doing repetition with the negative stuff, you
Oh,
know?
yeah,
I didn't
broken
get that.
record.
Could you try again?
My Siri is weighing in on the conversation over here.
Perfect.
That was weird.
Um, yeah, yeah, my critic has been on repeat for my whole life. It could definitely use some new material. That sounds
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. And there's I'll send you if other people want it. There's other material that I've spent a lot of time with of how to change your inner dialogue because
Okay.
it really is just narrative therapy. It's just the script that you're running over and over in your head. And so methods like tapping, if you've ever heard of tapping, I don't know if you've ever heard of that, where you tap these different parts. Have you heard of that before?
No, no.
It's therapeutic. I can send you stuff, but there's other ways to work around the neuroscience of your mind and reprogram your mind. Um,
Fascinating because yeah, I don't know if it's the neurodivergency or whatever, because and I have a really hot temper. No one ever sees it but me because usually self-inflicted.
yeah,
And I still do it coming up. I used to hit myself a lot. You just
yeah.
you get really infuriated, and it happens so quickly before I could ever stop it. Before I could even recognize what happened. It's just instant, like just flash boil over the pan. The whole
Oh yeah,
kitchen's on fire.
yeah,
So that's going to be a real big. I can tell it's going to be a real big struggle for me to catch it fast
yeah.
enough.
Yes, and it has to be because you have to do it with kindness.
Yeah.
It has to be a game. You have to gamify it. You have to be silly, like you do with your dog.
Okay.
When your dog gets in mud, you're not out there going, "You son of a bitch!" Yeah, da, da, da." You're not. You're like, "Oh, copper dog, what'd you do?" Da, 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 da. You pick her. You what? You know what? You have to be playful and sweet with yourself
Mm,
when you're starting this because I think the majority of people that are in the place that we're in, our most accessible emotion is extreme anger. Dude,
yeah.
I can be namaste'd out and somebody hits a bullhorn next to me and I'm taking heads. Like, I mean, berserker taking heads, man. I'm out of my
100%.
body. And I think a lot of us from trauma and neurodivergence, when these worlds mix, anger is such an overwhelming response. And you just have to play with it like, "Ah, I didn't catch it. I'm going to catch it next time. Oh, I didn't catch it. That's what I did. Oh my God, that's what I was doing an hour ago." It starts
Yeah.
like that. And then
Okay.
you slowly over time get it. Now, a lot of people in chat were talking about tapping. So I'm just going to say this to not leave everyone hanging. Just Google search the tapping solution. This is not woo woo. This is neuroscience. I've done it. I learned it from a guy that works with Olympian athletes, and they taught me how to do this when I was really having horrific PTSD issues. And it will center you. It's fantastic. And Max, I'll send you some information on that.
If
So
you can, if you can share some of that, like in the Discord in the
I'll get
workshop,
in the Discord. Yeah.
that'd be
Let me
great.
let me hit one thing because I know we're running out of time. I want to make sure we have a chance to talk with everybody.
Definitely, yeah.
Um,
We want to open up the chat and hang out with you guys.
yeah. So listen to this and let me know how good this stings. Become 1/10 as good at positive self-talk as we are at negative self-talk. We will notice an enormous change.
One
We're not.
tenth is going to be oceans.
Yes, yes. It's let me get this out the right way. I'm reading and editing the way. Saying nice things about ourselves is notoriously hard to do. It feels awful at first. Now, I want to go back to the beginning of this session, of this conversation. We were talking about how silly it felt to go on an art. And Max, you weren't the only one. People in the chat were like, yeah, I felt pretty silly.
Yeah.
That is your measuring stick. Notice that tells you where you're at on this spectrum of your artistic child and wholeness with it. If you feel silly, to take yourself out for an artist date, then you probably feel silly that you want attention for your art. You also probably feel silly that you would like people to know your art. Like, we learn from our reactions.
Yeah.
We learn from our reactions. And so watch over time. I told you guys last week, I don't remember the last time I went on an artist date because all of mine happened naturally. Like, it's now a big part of my life. I do artist dates all the time. But
Good.
it used to feel really silly and really ridiculous to me too. So everybody kind of treat these early days, that's your barometer of where you're at being comfortable with your creative self. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Oh, and you actually you nailed something so hard. And I don't think you well, all of these are just absolute bombs, but
Yeah.
you mentioned that like for instance, like taking up space, not wanting to be perceived, not wanting people to
Right.
see your work, even though that's like my job.
Yeah.
If one day when we do get to like actually meet in person, have a beer,
Yeah.
maybe under those chandeliers that I built, right? We
Hmm.
go and check them out. I will immediately you see them like, oh, those are cool. I'm gonna argue with you and tell you how big of pieces of shit they are,
Yes.
how terrible I am.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's horrible. And
Yeah.
it's like I don't know if it's like not wanting to take up space, don't see me, all this weird stuff.
Yeah. I could be wrong, but that typically is a critical parent echoing in your brain. Like, or a critical authoritarian. I'll open it up,
For
but
sure, for sure.
when you are as accomplished as you are, people pay you for your work. I know, but just hear me out. And you still have those thoughts. I understand that all artists hate their work when it's done for the most part, and there's a romantic nature to this love hate thing, but that's an echoing voice
Yeah.
that's living with you. And that echoing voice is telling you one day you're going to get to the place and you're going to be able to do these things. But right now, you're still learning, you're still getting it. There's a
You're
voice
still cutting the
developing.
teeth.
That's right. Yeah. Um, for time's sake, there's at the end of every chapter, there's a bunch of exercises and there's
Yes.
tasks. And I want people to know that you're not supposed to do all of these. It'd be insane if you did. I'll always pick out like the one that I've thought would be the best, and the one that has worked the best for this chapter on my book is page 35. And there's a process where she has you kind of write out all of your censors, what they say, like blurts, things you hear, right? Um, you'd be amazed, and we'll get into it next week. Things that people hear from their censor, like some people think being creative means that they're going to be gay. Some people, some people think that means they're not going to go to heaven. Some people think that they aren't going to have a family because they're creative, and it's not anything that we would ever say out loud. It's stuff
Yeah.
that was put into us before we had a choice.
Wild.
So,
Yeah, I'm seeing here unhappy, yeah, broke,
yeah,
crazy.
yes. So you make a list of your attacks. If I'm successful as a creative, I run the risk of becoming all these things: broke, poor, drug addict,
Interesting.
alcoholic, sex fiend. The
Yeah.
list. And you look at that, and then there's the exercise part. And I'm just going to read what she says here. One effective way to locate the source of this negative talk is to time travel. And I love this. This is one of my favorite exercises. I do this with kids. It's built into what we're doing with Camp Wonderment. Break your life into 5-year increments and list by name your major influences in each one of those blocks. So I would go 0 to 5, mom and dad; 5 to 10, mom and dad and a teacher. And when it starts adding as you go. Obviously, you start picking up coaches and mentors and girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever. But what happens is, as you go through this time travel block, you write down. Now, this doesn't mean the most positive influence people, just the
Yeah, just
people that were.
influences.
Yes.
Also, I agree
Go.
with the chat. Time travel sounds scary. Yeah,
Yes.
100%.
Yes, and it sounds scary in the idea of real time travel, and this time travel is also scary because what you're going to do is you're going to write these people out, and you will hear things from them that you have not heard in 20 years or more. For example, I remember one time I wrote out Coach Verba. He was an awesome coach. I wasn't an athlete. He was super nice to me. He's the one that helped me figure out I was dyslexic, blah, 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 blah. And I just wrote all these great things that he had to say about me. Next one, Coach McCullough. Skinner, you're a piece of shit. Skinner, you're retarded. Skinner, like things he said to me in front of everybody
Yeah.
came out, and I heard it as if I was a kid reliving it, and I could write that stuff out.
Wow.
And obviously, this isn't something you want to do like, hey, this is super fun. This isn't party kind of exercise. This is
Definitely
work.
not. This is
This is
work.
work. And I
Well,
understand
and
that not everyone's going to do it, but those that do, you will find some of these assassins that are living in your past. You'll
that's
find.
gnarly. And I don't know if anybody else can relate to this. I have a really hard time with memories.
Yeah.
Like my memory being a kid is I got maybe a handful of memories that I can like just kind of go back to. Um, so this will be a really interesting challenge to try and
Yeah.
remember a lot of these things.
And you might not have anything from years 0 through 15, and then you'll have something from 15 to 20 where a girl broke up with you or said something, you know. But there's something about writing out these blurts that come to your mind of what you'll be, the negative things that you can become, and then doing this time travel, it connects dots where you start realizing the very thing that you were saying about your chandeliers, that was said to you. That was taught to you. You did
Yeah.
work that was never good enough for someone. And
I
that
know.
is what you're saying to me before I get a chance to say it to you.
What the
That's all it
hell,
is.
Damien?
That's all it is, man. And I said this in the first session. Freedom from this stuff is on the other end of just a few uncomfortable conversations. You know what I mean? Like, let's
Yeah.
be honest, this is all a form of therapy. This is creative therapy,
Right.
recovering a sense of safety and a sense of self. And the things that you feel impulsive need to say to someone about your work, you're saying it before they get a chance to say it because someone said that shit to you at some point.
Definitely.
Yeah. So when I draw, I always go, all right, everyone, I can't draw for shit. It's ridiculous. Why? Because my art teacher told me I couldn't draw for crap. So now I always offer that. Right.
Yeah.
So feel free to do any of the other exercises. That sounds almost, yes, hurt them before they hurt you is another version of that. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's how trauma is expressed and how we protect ourselves. Um,
Whew.
every chapter moving forward is like this, Max. Just bombs.
Woo.
And for those that are going to hang in there, I'm going to encourage you to keep doing morning pages because
Yeah.
as these bombs go off kind of in your heart and in your mind, those morning pages are going to start really releasing some stuff.
Okay.
And so if you can, now I get the feeling that we have some perfectionists on here. That's always a safe thing to say. Yeah, that's true too. Um,
Wow. I love hearing from the chat. They're spot on, and they're right here with us, and I
Yes,
love
we're
it.
having the I've never been able to do it with the full group like this online, so this is really cool.
This is
Um,
really cool.
I want to encourage people to not do Artist Way 7 days a week. All right. So I know I'm just getting a feeling and I'm adjusting. I feel like a lot of people are still heavy into doing it and doing it the right way and like checking that off on their list.
Yeah.
I want it to be a freer thing, so I would like for some of you to not feel like you have to do it 7 days a week. Try doing 4 days a week this week. You know, just take it easy on yourself, not this. I got to finish because I started and I said I was going to do it. And that's
Yeah.
that heightened state that we're trying to get under. We're trying to get
Well,
back
it's
to that
also
natural flow.
the perfectionism. Jenna was just talking about it.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
perfectionism, the completionist.
Yes, that's the word. Thank you. Completionist. And so, at the end of every class, I will just tell us one exercise, but there might be some other ones in there that are better for you guys. So, look through them at the end. So,
Grace brings up a great point. Even the morning page is not every day, or should that still be as many mornings as you can muster?
I try to do it like 3 to 4 times a week. What I've
Okay.
noticed is when I do that 5 to 7 times, it's pushing me into a to-do list checklist mindset,
I'm
not a self-care kind of a thing.
Damian, I am so relieved to hear you say that
I bet you
because,
are, dude.
oh, buddy. Well, actually, so the first sentence is like, oh, here we go. But then the tab starts to open up and like, okay, here we go, and
Yep.
I'm rolling and everything's good. But yeah, like, and it is getting easier. But every day is a bit of a task. I've a little bit of disclosure. I've been doing 2 pages instead of three because
Yeah.
about two, I'm there. I can feel a little bit of the effects, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'm also trying not to like put things on them. Like I'm not looking for this, miraculous.
Right. Uh-oh.
Oh,
Yeah, we lost just for a second. You there? Uh-oh. I know you're having a storm, so I don't know if you can hear me or not. Yeah, it's definitely the rain. Max, come back! Dude, it sounds like you're being pulled into the matrix. Max. All right, I think I'm going to end it because we are at 62 minutes, or I could wind up sitting here for 10 minutes staring at myself. Yeah, don't touch the mirror. Great reference. Yeah, that is a great freeze. Look at that. Mine would be like, ah, the whole time. All right, I don't know if anyone can hear me or not. Love you guys. I'll see you next week, and I'll post some of this stuff that we were talking about in the Discord.